Well, hey there, folks. Chuck here, and welcome to a special interview edition of Diecast Breakdown. These are some episodes that we're going to be interspersing along with the new live versions of Diecast Breakdown that are a collection of interviews that we collected from a few months back that either had some technical difficulties or we weren't able to get to publication in time, but we wanted to share these with you anyway. This one is with Rick Wilson, who is the freelance editor of Diecast Collector magazine. He has several decades of experience in design, photography, automotive, train journalism, and has a wealth of knowledge on the world of diecast collecting in all facets. And if you haven't picked up a copy of Diecast Collector magazine, I highly recommend you do. It's a great magazine. Very much enjoyed reading it, and it was very cool for Rick to spend some time with us and get to know us a little better. You'll notice that Mark and I get really quiet after about 16 minutes into the interview, and that's because there were some technical difficulties, and David was the only surviving voice from the crew that made it on the final recording. So bear with us with the rest of this interview. There's still a lot of really great information shared, and you can kind of figure out from what Rick's talking about what the discussion was about, and you're honestly not here to listen to us talk anyway. So without any further ado, I present to you this fantastic interview that we had with Rick Wilson of Diecast Collector magazine.
You're watching Diecast Breakdown with Chuck Ellis, David Johns, and Mark McHotwheel. So sit back, strap in, and hang on. The breakdown starts now.
We are really excited today because we are joined by Mr. Rick Wilson of Diecast Collector magazine over in the UK, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the world of diecast publishing, the car culture scene in the UK, and just get to know him a little better. So, Rick, how are you doing today?
Hi, Chuck. Thanks very much. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. It's nice to be here. That's something new to me, I must admit. So hopefully we all come across okay.
Well, we'll do our best. We don't bite too hard over here, despite what you hear about us Yanks. Anyway, so Rick, tell us a little bit about Diecast Collector magazine for those who don't know.
Okay, it's a long-running magazine, actually. In fact, next month, the issue after the one I'm working on now will be our 300th issue, and that marks 25 years. We started in October 1997 was the first issue. So that's, it's been going quite a while. I've not been involved with it that long. I first became the editor in summer 2013. Then I took a break for a couple of years while I did some freelancing, but I was still writing for the magazine. And then I came back again in 2018. I've been there nearly 4 years again since. So, but this time I get to work from home, which is what you can see in the background here. This is the playground. I'm in the office.
Of course. Well, very cool. Well, so you said that you've done freelance, you've done a bunch of different things from what I've seen looking on your LinkedIn page and such, but tell us a little bit about how do you get started writing about diecast cars?
Well, I've always been interested in writing, basically to go back to the beginning in terms of my writing career. I've been a big fan of the Le Mans 24 Hours since a very young age. And I got started in the 90s working for somebody else's website, actually in the press room, taking pictures trackside, and I'd always been interested in writing anyway. But that kind of gave me the bug. But I realized very quickly, I thought, I want to do it my own way. So the next year, 1999, I came back with my own website, and it kind of went from there. And that got me into writing on the internet, writing for magazines such as Autosport, which is a big motorsport magazine over here. Only the one article, but it was a foot in the door. And then from there, it kind of ballooned from there, really, when the opportunity came to take over at Diecast Collector, which is actually produced 5 miles down the road from where I live. So that's really handy to have it that local. And it just went from there, really.
Before you came on here, Rick, I was just scrolling through this thing. I was just really impressed on that because I'm into photography, but the photography on these diecast cars make them look real. So I mean,
thank you.
Tell us a little bit about the photography aspect of what it takes to put this together and how much how time consuming that can be.
Okay, thank you. Well, most of the photography, quite a big chunk of photography, is done by me. Just down the other end, down the other end of the office, I've got a studio set up down there with some big lights and everything, just to try and play around. And it's took me a while to get the camera setting right. But basically, one of the problems I find with model photography, if people just do use their iPhone or something, if they get too close, you get a proper. It's the phenomenon in photography world called tilt shift, which basically means you've got a very narrow depth of field because it's not like in the real world. So to get around that, you just open the aperture up. It makes the exposure longer. So you have to have a tripod and a shutter release, but it works so much better. So I'm pleased you like the photos because it proves it works.
Oh yeah, it's working great. I mean, it's just like it's almost like you're looking at real cars. And that's a lot of times when you see people taking photos, there's some pretty harsh shadows and stuff like that to where it makes it just seem like, yeah, these are definitely cars. But it makes it very pleasing to the eye when you're reading a magazine, which is important when you're trying to
Thank you.
sell magazines.
It helps when the models are so good. I mean, so well. I mean, even at 1/64 scale now, the qualities are getting incredible now with the sort of premium manufacturers coming into the market, like Mini GT in 064, Tarmac Works, etc., etc. They're producing some amazing models, and it makes my job easier.
Yeah. For sure. I agree.
Yeah, it's definitely, obviously with 1/64. I mean, I know 1/64 has been massive over your side of the Atlantic for many decades, and it's kind of been bubbling under over here, and not so much in Europe. Europe's been quite active, but certainly in the UK recently, it's something that's really taking off. I mean, Mini GT, to be honest, is what got me back into it, into 1/64s per se. I've always been a collector of like Matchbox Superfast in the old days and Hot Wheels many decades, but the true 1/64s, when they started hitting over here with Mini GT, that wow, okay, right. And in just the space of a few years, as usual, I've got a little bit of a collection going on, one or two. I did. Here's one I made earlier. There we go. That one. Yes. I wondered if that might come up.
Great. I love it.
Even in just the 9 years I've been involved, it's changed quite a lot. I mean, obviously with the production for virtually everything now being out in the Far East, I mean, that obviously had changed massively from when I was a kid with Superfast, etc. But I mean, even in the 9 years I've been working here, it's still changed quite dramatically. I mean, obviously we've had the global pandemic, which has had a massive impact on shipping and everything. We've had our own problems in the UK, without going into too much detail, but some various political problems which have caused further problems on imports, etc. And that's just all added into the mix. So we're really struggling here. We've had a couple of big companies over here who have really struggled, who were massively successful before, but they're both struggling a bit now with delays and everything, and just volume coming through or not coming through. So it's kind of hitting them where it hits. So the next couple of years, I think, will be quite interesting. I mean, it's refreshing to see it is starting to come back. I mean, the annual big toy fair over in Europe is at Nuremberg at Spielwarenmesse, and that's not happened since January 2020. And that was starting to get a bit quiet even then before the pandemic hit. So that's going to be interesting when that runs again for the first time next January, February, as to that'll give a bit of an insight as to where we might be going then. But I mean, it's changed. There are two markets effectively that are both changing almost at the same time. We've got the smaller scale, we've got the Hot Wheels, the cheaper end, then we've got the premium end, but then obviously the bigger scales. It's interesting to see that every so often, all of a sudden we get a new scale, well, it's an old scale, but a new scale coming through. For example, all of a sudden 1/24th, the classic kit scale over here, and I think it used to be 1/25th to you guys, and now I think it still is, but 1/24th has become a really popular die-cast scale, and lots of manufacturers are jumping on the bandwagon because they're trying to find gaps to fill, to do something new, because obviously they've kind of reached saturation point with a lot of the other scales with the terms of covers that they've been doing and everything. So it's easier to do it all again, slightly downscale from 1/18th perhaps, or just into another scale. So, and even to a certain extent, 1/32nd classic slot scale is starting to come through a little bit more as well. It's really interesting to see how it's evolving.
Rick, one thing I wanted to point out to our viewers and listeners, if you don't know this magazine, you have got to look into this. This isn't Diecast Collector or Diecast Car Collector or Diecast Train Collector. This is Diecast, and you mean that. There is something for every type of Diecast fan in this magazine. But we've got, and for you 1/64 scale nuts like us, that is on the cover of this issue. So don't think that you get lost in the fray. Those are covered. But what I'm curious is, with such a huge scope of models and action figures and everything that you're covering in here, trains, I saw monorails from Singapore in this magazine. How in the world do you stay on top of everything that's going on in the entire diecast world? What kind of network does the magazine have to be current on all of this information? It's a fascinating publication that you put out.
Thank you. I mean, it's interesting, that's for sure. And thankfully, I have a great team of contributors, some mostly based in the UK, but I do have some from overseas as well. But it's sort of, they're all experts in their own field. It's like the guy you mentioned, the Singapore monorail you mentioned, is by a guy called Mike Piggott. He's Australian, but he lives in the UK now, has done since a young lad. And he writes in every issue. And he's great because he's really knowledgeable about some really niche stuff, like the monorail. But he's also a big, small scale collector as well. So he'll be working with me on the sequel to Fast and a lot of his words were actually in the original anyway, but we're working together to expand and make that at least twice the size for the 60th anniversary. So that's 2029. So we've got a few years yet. Yeah. I was thinking Super Fast and 60. So that's just a working title at the moment.
The more alliteration, the better. I like it. Well, hey, on behalf of Diecast Breakdown, can we be the first to wish Diecast Collector a happy silver anniversary?
Thank you very much. You are the first. Thank you.
Yeah. Fantastic. On the record. All right.
It's quite a task, I must admit. I say with all the various contributors we've got, they bring certain areas, but I try and focus. I spend way too much time, even when I finished in the evening, sitting on my phone whilst pretending to watch telly, just scrolling through social media, picking up stuff, and also the tempter. We don't always get that many samples sent through, so I spend way too much of my own money on samples, which never get sold on. But you know how it is. It's the nature of the game. But yeah, it is tricky to try and keep track of everything. But social media does massively help, because obviously you sort of the likes of sort of Facebook or whatever, you can get stuff come up in your news feed, or I to remember to go, when it comes to doing news for the magazine, I think, okay, I need a few articles. It's always easy to find something, just hit a few channels and something always comes up. But it is tricky because, I mean, basically in terms of the production, apart from my contributors so me doing the news pages, etc., I'm trying to keep a tab on that. Some of them will send news articles in. So yeah, I'm trying to keep on top of that as well. So it just adds more excitement to the job. It's a good thing. I enjoy it, really. But yeah, it can be difficult. I mean, it's easy for stuff that I'm really interested in, like the motorsport or something like that, or particularly in the 164 stuff. But other areas where I'm not such an expert, I am an expert, is it like trucks and everything. I have to rely on a couple of guys who keep, and farming equipment and stuff. I have to rely on a couple of guys in particular who will keep me in the loop, send me any hot news, and if there's any particular trade shows, because particularly with the farming models, that's a whole separate area in terms of they have their own trade shows just for farming. So, and farming models, etc. So I do rely heavily on other people to keep me in the loop, and I'm very aware that we don't cover everything, but we cover as much as we can. I just enjoy the ride as I go along. I don't really have any particular favorites. I mean, I suppose to a certain extent, the one answer would be going back to what I was saying about the Toy Fair in Nuremberg. When it happens, it's always great. Much as we seem to have gone into a world of sort of virtual recording, there is no real substitute face to face, and it's so good to just nip out. I mean, Germany's not far for us, to just hop on a quick flight out there and just go and you meet everyone there. And it's good to actually get there, and you discuss things you wouldn't discuss on the phone because it becomes a little bit more friendly, and there might be a beer or two involved as well. So it's always good to do that. So that's kind of one of my favorite things to do. But in terms of the actual articles or sort of interviewing people, we don't interview people quite so much because we normally just focus on the models, although we do occasionally do like a spotlight piece on someone or somebody's company or whatever. But yeah, it's difficult to pick a favorite area, but I do enjoy going to Nuremberg for that very reason.
It's a magazine that could get, so you could focus on 1/43rd scale auto and never run out of subject matter. You could take pictures of the infinite number of models. So how, as a magazine, do you always carve out space for the other genres of diecast and give them a little bit of articles in the magazine and always making sure it's diverse. Is that something that the magazine, like if you had a mission statement, it's to cover every part
Yeah,
of the
it's all
diecast?
about balancing, really. I have to try and plan ahead. Otherwise, you're right. Otherwise, we could easily saturate the magazine with too much of one aspect. So I have to kind of plan ahead. Always try and have it. It's easy to get color articles in at any scale. That's the easiest aspect. There's never any shortage. I mean, we have contributors coming. We have our regular contributors and we have new contributors coming in, and at least 3/4 of those newbies will be something to do with cars. So that seems to be the main thrust. Well, we do try and cover aviation, try and cover buses, we try and cover trucks and everything. So it's actually always good to try and get someone in who's covering that sort of area. So it is a balancing act, but I do have to kind of plan ahead. I'm very good with my spreadsheets. So I've normally got the magazine plan mainly, apart from the new models and the news, of course, best part of about 12 months ahead. So I know roughly what's, but these things are movable. So if something needs to jump in, I can bump these around. But yeah, I do try and sort of, doesn't happen every issue, but I do try and have something for everyone.
Kudos to you guys.
I'm supposed to be, because I'm freelance this time around and I don't technically work full time, but it does feel like it sometimes because, I mean, in terms of, I've never actually sort of sat down and totted up the hours, although I should do really, but quite often I'll be working into the evenings. Every so often there'll be weekends, but then I can nip out to the shops during the day if I need to. So it's very flexible, but yeah, it's difficult to know actually. I mean, it's one of those, if I wanted to, I'm sure I could work literally every hour, every day on it, but although not physically possible. So I do try and find a balance, but it helps the fact that this has, I mean, when I got started in this, diecast collecting was very much, oh, it's nice to have a few of these dotted around. And somebody said to me very quickly afterwards, how's the collection? Oh no, I'm fine. I've got everything I need. And then fast forward a few years and the office is just crammed. The house is crammed. I've got stuff in storage in outbuildings and stuff. So yeah, it has got a little bit taken over, but it's, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's however much you want to put into it, if you know what I mean. I mean, you guys, I'm preaching to the converted, aren't I? So you guys are complete diecast heads or whatever. What is the official term?
I think aficionado gives it the sophistication it deserves.
That's the official term. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
The posh version. I like that. Yeah, it's always good to get. I get a lot of emails. I actually even get some real old school handwritten letters from time to time. But the majority of the Dear Editor pages we carry are normally via email. But yeah, it's always good to have some interaction with people. I mean, people they might be asking questions about an article in the magazine, and sometimes we don't get everything right, and people are quite happy to point out and correct us, which is great. I've got no problem with carrying corrections in the magazine because we're all learning as we're going along. It is, as you say, such a vast and varied hobby. But yeah, it's great. I mean, another thing is people like yourself, Chuck, do the customizations and the code 3s, and they'll send in examples of that. So it's great to get feedback from that. And it's just really nice to. But even in the evenings and everything, there's one guy over your side actually who I've got to know really well over the years, and he's a massive James Bond enthusiast. And he always sends me stuff, and it comes into me in the middle of the night. So I can quite often get up in the morning and I've got some sort of link to another James Bond, this, that, and the other. It's great to be able to interact with people all over the world. We do have people in Australia and New Zealand as well, and other countries. But I mean, the UK, parts of Europe, US and Australia and New Zealand are our biggest area. But yeah, so it's nice to get the interaction and it's nice to get the people. But it's nice to be able to help, really. Yeah. Because we don't do that many interviews. Somebody I really like to talk to is Glenn. Is it Glenn Chu? I think the MD of Mini. We started interacting a little bit on Facebook recently on his Facebook page. Now I know him, and I'd like to interview him. That's probably one of the things. I would have loved to have interviewed Ryu, obviously, and any of the Hot Wheels designers. To be honest, I mean, although I didn't really have that many Hot Wheels as a kid, this is going back to what we were saying just now about the sort of budget end of collecting. What really got me kind of back into it, really, it was about 2001 were two things. One of which was going around our supermarkets and finding the cheap boxes of Hot Wheels, Matchbox, etc., and just going for a good old rummage. And again, it's a cheap way of getting back into it, but it's just nice to have that sort of accessibility when we haven't got that many high street hobby stores in the UK anymore. It's mostly online. But yeah, so it's nice to have the variant. So yeah, I mean, so kind of going back to what I was saying originally, growing up with the Hot Wheels and everything, I've got to know, and it's like when Ryu passed away, I thought, I need to do some, and I started researching all the castings he's been responsible for. And I didn't realize quite how many of his I already had. We obviously had a sort of the stuff he does, like obviously the real sort of the Japanese sort of racing cars and stuff, and also the fantasy stuff. There's obviously we had a similar sort of brain affinity in that respect. So, which is why it's so sad the fact that I never actually thought about contacting beforehand. But yeah, so and it'd just be nice to, I guess, again, going back to what to interview, it's the people behind the production, where their ideas come from. I'd be fascinated to know.
And also, Rick, we got a treat for you, because we have an interview with Brendan Vituski, a Hot Wheels Redline Club designer. He does a lot of the new RLC pieces that have come out recently. And we had an issue or an episode post not too long ago. I'll send you the link to that if you're curious about hearing from one of these actual designers. And I do want to mention to the fans as well, and to Rick, that we'll have representatives from another major diecast company on shortly. So keep an eye out for that.
When I was little, I had one ambition, and that was to become an airline pilot. So I used to do a lot of going to airports. At the time I lived sort of on the edge of London. So I used to jump on a bus or on a train, or sometimes I'd even jump on my bike and cycle there to London's Heathrow and Gatwick airports and just do the old plane spotting. And I just really wanted to become an airline pilot. I loved seeing the Braniff Big Orange come in from Fort Worth, from Dallas, and that used to come into Gatwick. That was great to see. And yeah, I just loved all that stuff. So when I didn't do quite as well as I needed to in the subjects I needed to do at school, and that clearly wasn't an option, I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Right.
And it took me till I was about 30 years old to get into the designing and the writing as a career. So yeah, that's what, and it's bizarrely, it's why I'm surprised I haven't got quite as many aircraft models as I thought of. Some people, I've got some, but again, it's getting the scale I'd like. It's going back to what Track was saying about the scales and everything. Trying to display everything is just with large aircraft is crazy. Yeah, where I live is kind of north of London. We're up in the military heartland. So there's a USAF base not too far from here. There's a couple of RAF bases, and they all seem to congregate over our house when they're going off to do their low-level flying over in Wales. So we get like a mini dogfight virtually every day. It is fantastic. And the noise, because they're literally overhead and quite low, really. It's great to see. But you're just touching back on what you're saying about the Lego. You might have noticed just up there's a hint of Lego. I don't know if it'll come out on the screen, hopefully.
Yep.
But that's actually some stuff I had from when I was, and it's kind of got a little bit out of hand again now. So, I mean, I'm lucky insofar as being in the office and not working full time. It's easy to get a little bit distracted, and it is like, I mean, people sort of who come into my office who talk friends and everything, do you get paid for this? Really?
Right.
You're playing with Lego, you're mucking around with toy cars, not mucking around. Obviously, we know it's serious business, but that's just kind of how it's viewed. I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do for a living.
Amen.
It's going back to the childhood influences. So it's difficult to know exactly when the diecast started. I'm pretty sure it was when I was about 5 years old, and that's when Superfast came out, because we didn't really have the influx of Hot Wheels over here by then. So the Superfast was our thing here. There wasn't so much exposure in the shops. But yeah, so that kind of, that it's been ingrained in me from a very early age. So
hey, Rick, is this you? With the BW band?
Oh yes, that's me.
There you go with your Superfast right there. So
yeah, that was me at a very young age. And that was one of my pocket money purchases there. It's a bit older, that obviously a bit grainy, that picture, but that's what cameras were like. Those were back then, weren't they? So, yeah, so it was just, that was one of my favorites. Unfortunately, like Chuck was saying about virtually all of his being given away, that happened to me. In fact, I've virtually got nothing die-cast from my childhood. I don't know if it will come out. There's one up there, which is the Space 1999 Eagle Transporter, which is the only die-cast I've got left from childhood. And even that's missing its pod now, but that's a long story. And it's actually, no, it's over there. Sorry, you can't see, it's behind my head. But yeah, so I've started off collecting stuff I had as a kid. And that's what got me back into it, or part of the reason that got me back into it. So that was in about 2001 when I came across the Hot Wheels in the supermarkets more. It helped having young kids. Of course, that was my excuse for rummaging.
Oh, yeah. Not for me, for them.
Oh, right. Okay.
So, hey, I'm curious. I know you think highly of Mini GT. You made that point earlier.
Yeah.
What are some other, for our 164 fanatics, what are some 164 scale companies that you're really, really enjoying getting to know or have continued collecting?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many now, and actually researching the series of articles we're just doing that was on the cover, that Small World cover, that was the first of a four-parter. Yeah. And it's actually introduced me to some brands that's the one even I hadn't heard of. So again, it's because it's growing so fast. There are names coming out all the time. I mean, if I can just bear with me a second, I'll just, here's one there. Something like this. Stance
Hunters.
Never heard of them. And they've done this amazingly detailed
that Porsche
Fiat Transporter.
Fiat.
I'm trying to find it difficult to find some models within budget to put on there. But that's incredible, and the detail on that is, and even the Schuko motor racing transporters as well. They've done a series of Mercedes-Benz, the Porsche team transporters. They've just released the third one. So I mean, they're not as detailed as the Style Hunters, but I mean, going to the other end, like Tarmac Works, you've got the M2 machines as well. I've got a lot of green light. You guys obviously will know about these, but it's the NO64 and stuff like that. There's some really good detailed stuff coming out that, again, I'm only just really becoming aware of. So it's an expanding market. Yeah. Are you getting this many? I presume you must be getting that many over in the States as well. You must get all these brands over there as well.
Well, I'll speak for me. I have to hunt on basically the Chinese eBay, AliExpress. I order every new brand I can come across, and there's a new one every month. I mean, it's just endless. And whether they have a license or not, who knows? Kind of a don't ask, don't tell. We just order them and enjoy the cars.
Well,
that's right. I'm on the dark web.
That's how I got hold of the Stance Hunters, because they're on pre-order in the UK. They haven't officially made it in the UK yet, but I couldn't wait. I had to get hold of one. So I took a chance and bought one on eBay, but thankfully sort of haven't really found any dodgy sellers yet. You're never really quite sure. But yeah, it came really quickly, as do most of the ones I ordered from China. In fact, I've just taken the plunge and ordered another brand I like to collect in 164 is the Spark ones, so Sparky.
Spark, yeah.
And I managed to get a couple when I was at the 124 hours the other week, because they always have a stand there. But there were a couple they didn't have, and I really want to get hold of. And so I came back, and again, I took a chance, and I've ordered them from a guy in the States, again on eBay, and they came so quickly. I was amazed, because we've got all sorts, as I was explaining earlier on, we've got all sorts of problems with customs and ports and everything with the new regulations we've got going on. So I was amazed how quickly they came in, and I didn't get charged any extra duty on top. I must have paid it all up front. But that was so quick.
Yeah.
But I mean, the Spark ones are here. And this is the American, and this is its sister car from Le Mans 1970. This is one of the ones I actually bought to Le Mans. This is the European packaging.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
They're so great as well. I mean, it's interesting because Spark and its other brand, Bizarre, are all resin cars. But I don't know who makes them for them, if they make them themselves, but they're all die cast, these ones. So I'd be interested to try and find out exactly what the manufacturing relationship is there, because it can get a little intertwined with other brands helping other brands. And again, I'm sure you must come across this as well. So people work together. Yeah. It's particularly in 164th where you've got all is it Mijo or Mijo? I don't know how you pronounce it, the exclusives and everything that they sort of get with they seem to have collaborations with all the manufacturers, don't they? Yep. And it's quite impressive, some of the stuff they're turning out, but it is difficult. Just going back to what you're saying, how do I keep up with everything? If anything, this 164th is the area I really struggle to keep up with, even though it's my main collecting area, because there's so much going on all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good time to be a 164 collector for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I was that guy that told my wife, this is the cheapest hobby I could find. These are $1 each. And I promise you, I haven't collected a Hot Wheel for myself in a good while. It's all $20, $25 cars now. And that $1 a piece ship sailed long ago, but we love them. That's why we're here.
We definitely do. it's. I do find it difficult to not have a rummage there when I do go through the supermarket. I always get drawn down that aisle, just in case there's a new box, some new stuff coming out. I mean, most of the stuff now I don't tend. There's only one or two in each case generally that appeal to me. But then there's a good mix, and we know then actually that most of the models are actually aimed at a little bit younger than me. So it's nice to find one or two. I mean, what I used to find, I used to try and just get stuff that Hot Wheels went through a period of doing really good budget, but really good replicas of real racing cars, particularly Le Mans. And nobody else did that at the time. So that kind of what drew me into Hot Wheels. And then I started getting drawn into the TV and film stuff like classic Batmobiles, etc. So it still has its value. And I still find a little bit of excitement every time I turn down the toy aisle.
Never change, Rick Wilson.
No.
Is there any vehicle, any piece of nostalgia that you cannot find in diecast that you just your holy grail of something that is not a diecast model yet? And it can be anything you can think of.
That's a really good question. It's one of those, because I get bombarded with so much temptation all the time. I guess I almost don't have enough time to think of what I might want on top of that. Yeah. There are some cars I've owned that I'd like to have a diecast model of that have either been done really as a budget model. I mean, my current car, which is probably not going to translate because I know they don't sell in the States, is a Peugeot station wagon. And nobody does any models of that. No one. So, but it's going to be a very limited market. So I'm not expecting that anytime soon. But yeah, it's just, I mean, I've had some nice Saabs over the years. It'd be nice to get hold of, and most of them have been modeled. Yeah, I can't really answer that, I'm afraid. But having said that, the moment we finish this interview, I will think of something.
Yep, of course.
Or I'll be sitting down later on this evening and think, oh yeah, I should have said that.
Now,
yeah.
Are you
in the morning?
Have you seen the Peugeot wagons done by Norev? They do a few in the Peugeot line. I'm curious if you've seen that.
Yeah, I mean that's where, if it was going to happen, it would probably come through Norev, because they have such a good. I've got a fair few of theirs of the various models they've made, but yeah, it's that's going to be my most likely avenue. But for some reason nobody's done. Well, not that I've found. Actually, no, tell a lie. They have done a 407 SW, but it's so hard to get hold of, and when they do come up, they're really expensive. But for some reason, they haven't made more of the casting. I think they made 2 models actually. Well, until the other day, I would have said the Spark stuff, because we really don't get the Sparky 164s in the UK, which is why I had to buy some in France the other week. But then I've come back, and all of a sudden, well, basically the problem being that import charges and postal charges from the US have gone sky high because of the way the countries are working at the moment, ever since sort of we left the European Union. So that's all sorts of problems with importing stuff, and people adopting the global shipping program seems to attract massive shipping costs for something so small. So it actually makes that prohibitive. So I'd actually abandoned the thought of getting any Sparkies. So when I found this guy the other week and it was really cheap and really fast, I was really pleased. But yes, I will bear that in mind. Thank you. And of course, that reciprocates to you guys. If there's something you're after that we have, I can't think what that might be. Yeah, that
check it out, Mark. There they are. He got them all over.
There's a wholesaler in the UK. We've had 2 wholesalers, the 2 big wholesalers for diecast in the UK, both import Mini GT. So I'm very lucky in that respect. So we do get those, and I might have all of them on order, all the Kino House ones, because I know they're not strictly 164. They haven't worked out exactly what scale they are.
Yeah,
but
a little big.
You know, I just love the whole concept. That collaboration is wonderful. Okay. Yeah, I must admit, I've not come across any Chase ones over here. They're all really standard there. But no, sure, if there are any that you are struggling with, that we might have, who knows, just give us a shout, because we should be able to do something. Yeah. I mean, the boxes are bigger, but I mean, the cars are a little bit longer with those big, massive spoilers out the back, aren't they? So the rear wings. So. Yeah, I love that they're really solid, aren't they? And turning them over and seeing the chassis underneath. I should have one here to do this.
Right.
But yeah, just the coloration they put into it, and the whole concept is really, it's odd for me because normally I like realistic vehicles. And there's something about that whole concept, that whole mix that really appeals to me. And I know they've obviously been sticking largely with the 510, but I'm sure I saw something yesterday, in fact, that Glenn was showing of the another Datsun.
Rick, that's my holy grail is a 1993 Saturn 4-door sedan.
Well, there's something for everyone, isn't there? So,
Hey, thank you. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rick.
we can come up with for the next episode.
All right. That sounds like a deal. Well, on behalf of everybody, have a wonderful weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Right. No, it's great to meet them both. So, and Chuck as well when he's back on the scene. So thanks a lot, guys. And thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. Nice to meet you. Speak soon. Cheers.
All right. Well, that was Rick. Thank you again so much for joining us. Rick Wilson of Diecast Collector Magazine. Absolute joy to get to know him and spend some time with him. And we will absolutely have him back on when we have our technical stuff better figured out. We've got some different software we're working with now that should be less problematic, we hope. But yeah, if you get the chance, go over to Diecast Collector Magazine. We'll have the link in the description for you to check it out. And yeah, thank you for making it to the end of this interview. Next week, we will be having another interview because I will be traveling. But be sure to stick around for that one. Hit the bell. Make sure you're subscribed, getting the notifications if you're on YouTube, because it's going to be Glenn Chu of Mini GT, and he's got some other diecast brands under his belt. And he had a fantastic interview with us where he talked about the rise of Mini GT, the interest in 164s, and what it's like to create a premium brand in the 1/64th scale. So that is a very cool interview that we were very honored to have Glenn join us, and it's so nice to finally be able to get that interview out after it's been parsed and reassembled from the tatters of the what we're calling glitch era of Diecast Breakdown. So again, next week, another pre-recorded interview, but we'll be back the week after with another edition of Diecast Breakdown Live, and that's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be talking about Hollywood cars in diecast scale and the best and worst cars of that genre, especially in 1/64. Again, thank you to our amazing patrons and subscribers who keep the show running. We could not do this without you. And if you want to know how you can support the show as well, you can hit the little join button on YouTube, or you can visit diecastbreakdown.com, and that'll take you to a list of links, including our Patreon page and all the different social medias that you can follow us. So again, thank you, supporters, members, patrons, and you for making it to the end of this episode. As always, we want to thank you for coming along with us for the ride. So until next time, stay fresh, cheese bags.
Thanks for listening to Diecast Breakdown. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend to listen in. Find Diecast Breakdown on your favorite social media platforms or visit diecastmedianetwork.com to learn more about this and our other projects. Diecast Breakdown is a presentation of Flying Valiant and the Diecast Media Network.